Companies should allow people to build their personal brand because that means they're working for you and people know them and it's a big deal, as well as you're getting the opportunity to grow because maybe you're in a role that doesn't grow much.
Welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Welcome to episode 48. This week, I am excited to have Lynn Winter, a digital project manager, content strategist, and founder of Manage Digital, a Minnesota conference specifically for digital project managers. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that I'm available to speak at your organization or conference on how to establish a growth mindset. Hit me up at Kurt, that's K-U-R-T, Kurt at foundrymakes.com to learn more. Speaking of Foundry, head over to foundrymakes.com to learn more about how we accelerate innovation in companies big and small. That's foundrymakes.com. And now, on with the show. It's good to see you.
You too.
So let's talk a bit about your background. How did you get involved in project management? Were you just pining away as a young woman, thinking about like how you can just wrangle developers and designers for the rest of your life?
Well, since I'm not 20, that thing didn't really exist when I was growing up. But I was very into organization and spreadsheets and things like that. So I did, right out of college, get one of my first jobs doing project management. Okay. So I'm not really the fall into it or, oh, crap, somebody needs this job. Like I was like, yeah, I want to do that.
I want to do that.
So it started from the beginning, I guess.
Okay. And then, so what was your first role like in digital project management? I think we had talked earlier about how it didn't really exist and you kind of had to create that, right? Yeah.
So I had started, my first job was at Twin Cities Public Television. And so I was in the TV industry and doing that. So we did have like digital and internet and websites and stuff. But what it really was is that you'd make a website that would get posted when a show went live nationally, and then it would sit there and no one would touch it. So it was just really a print piece on web. And so my first experience while I was managing all the production and the things around that was the websites, that we, basically did because it was a funder requirement. After that, in 2008, I got an opportunity to work with some folks that I had connected with through that job at their agency. And so I decided to take a job over there, and they didn't have a project manager yet. So there was 4 of them working away, building awesome stuff for nonprofits. And they said, hey, come join us. And I said, okay. And I looked at the job description. They said, by the way, which actually they didn't tell me at the time. I found out a year or so later that 2 people sat down and literally wrote everything they hated about the job, their jobs, and then they made a new job description. And that became my job. I mean, I wanted to do all those things. I liked it, but there was a nice undertone for quite a while that was the crap work nobody else wanted to do.
Yeah. One of the things I find interesting is how project management is so defined as a role, but product management is just a Wild West show in a lot of cases because it is literally everything marketing and IT and everything does not want to do.
See, I actually disagree with that because I was recently at the National DPM Summit and I talked to people over and over and how their agencies or internal in-house folks use that role is very different. I mean, some PMs don't even get to talk to clients.
Yes.
They're just like dumped off things. That's true. They have account managers or other roles around that. Some people are given everything and expected to do all this stuff. So I almost found like there almost is no consistency. And the way an agency or organization values is all over the map too, which I find a little unfortunate because it's 2018.
Yeah, it is 2018.
I wish we were further as an industry and as a group of people, but we've got a long fight to go still.
Not to counter argue that, but like there is an air of consistency with the project management role because you have things like PMP, Scrum certification, all these different things, and you think you do those things, and then your job will be like this, right? But then the minute you step into an agency or something like that, you find it's all over the map. And I used to struggle this as a leader of a large project management team, having to hire people because they would come from so many different backgrounds. Some had talked to clients, some had never, but they've been kept in a dark box. Put
them away, feed them every, 10 hours.
Some didn't even really talk to their the team that often either, or they were basically the CTO of the company. You know what I mean? It was like the scale was so huge, right?
Yeah. And if you think about it, you said, well, there's regulations. We got our PMP, but the PMP is not a digital project manager situation.
That's not going to help me, Lynn?
No.
Oh,
you're sitting next to construction workers and okay, you got one. Maybe we shouldn't argue about the value of certification since I don't have any and I don't believe too strongly in them. Unless someone wanted to pay for me to get one, then that's a very different situation.
Right. It is a different situation. Certification really helps, especially in the larger the organization you want to be a part of. They really value that. But when you're talking about agencies, it's a lot of they just want to see like a sense of urgency and gumption and like, you know, being able to think on your feet, right? Because I see things like that in the job descriptions where it says these weird subjective things like, you know, must be able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and like think on your feet and I'm like, how does that?
How are you going to prove that even?
Yeah. How do I write that into my resume? Right.
Yeah.
So you've had the pleasure of like, obviously for the last few years going to like the Digital Project Management Summit and then speaking at it this year. How has that journey gone for you from project management to kind of moving towards the thought leader side of project management? How did that kind of manifest?
Yeah, well, I think it really started with the agency where I got, you know, everyone's crap work. And because of like, I don't sit very quiet. I tend to go in places like a bull in the china shop and kind of like want to get engaged and do stuff. And so I found myself in a role where I had to define it. And so I worked really hard. And so as the first couple of years, I'd make mistakes, right? I'd push this way. Oh, that's not going to work. And I pushed this way and didn't work. And then as a couple of years got on, I got more comfortable with what I knew was the right things to do. So I started making my own techniques and figuring that out and then seeping myself into other areas of the agency. So I started doing sales and QA and content strategy and IA and kind of just figuring that out. So I just decided that I am for myself as well as like helping the project and the client, because I always had that mind, like, how do I make this better? How to make the client happier? Like, I just try to start filling those gaps. And then as far as community goes, it made a big change the first time I went to the first DPM summit back in Austin, I think is when we met each other.
Yes.
And that was the second one, and I couldn't even tell you what year that was. No,
1947.
couple years ago. I mean, it wasn't like 20 years ago or something. It was a couple years ago. But that was the first time I really found community, because I was lost a little bit trying to find project managers anywhere.
They're not the most social. They're not like all on Twitter, like thought leader Twitter people, or
well, I think people are maybe self-conscious in themselves in the role. It's like, oh, I have to do that job, or nobody likes that job. And then I went there and I found a bunch of people that were excited and proud and trying to solve problems and having problems. And it was this huge like networking event and sharing and kumbayaing and learning. And that was kind of a big turning point for me to get a little more strength in my, you know, what I believe in and what I'm doing.
And then, so kicking that off, you saw there's all these people that find that value out there, and you got excited about contributing to that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really where I started, talking, started a conference, and I got to, as you mentioned, got to speak at the DPM Summit this year. So that was a kind of a goal I had for several years. So that was really fun.
That's great.
Because that's a great way to learn things and invest in yourself as well as meet more people.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that summit, and the next one that I had gone to. Just like you said, it's a vibrant community.
Yes, and everybody shows up at 8 a.m. with their computers open. It's sitting in the front row. Yeah, super weird.
No, it's one of the only. It's definitely has like this secret mantra of like on time is late. You know, everybody's like already ready to go and not just like filing in and stuff. I remember coming. I did a talk at one of the summits. And then I was like packing up and stuff. And then I remember like thinking the show can't be over because there's like nobody in the hallways or anything. Nobody's like moving around or whatever. But that's because everybody is in their place in their seat watching the next speaker.
I know. It's great.
Yeah, it's a very organized group. So let's talk a little bit about your talk. So what did you talk on this last this summit?
Yeah, I decided to talk about DPM burnout, and that was a lot because that's been a lot of challenge that I've been working on over the last year or two.
Okay, and
or life, I should maybe say.
I was going to say, just ebb and flow, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, what's kind of the thesis? What's the roll up?
It's kind of like taking a look at a couple of things. Like, first of all, like our industry is really pushing for burnout. There's a lot of really strong stats about it. 2/3 of like full-time workers claim they've had burnout. I mean, it's with everybody. But Lynn, when you look at the tech industry stats, it gets really bad. Of course, people in San Francisco are kind of throwing that off a little bit, right?
Sure.
So there's that. And then looking at your environment. So I've worked at some places that were super positive and people went home and we talked about family. And then there's places that were like
toxic,
just here. Yeah, exactly. And throw it on and throw it on. And then you have to decide then for yourself, like, are you the person that can handle that environment? Are you causing that problem? Are you that?
Are you the bad roommate?
I'm the bad person often. Like, I just want to keep solving and fixing and going and pushing. But there's no end, like, right, until we die. And so you have to learn that. So the talk was more about first realizing that I think project managers are a little more at risk. One, because we are in the role of like the matriarch and the patriarch. Like, we're there to take care of everybody. We want to make sure everything's there when they start, when they're not, because either the products throw off, it causes us more problems. We want everyone to be happy. And then when we look around behind our back, no one's there taking care of us, right? So that's kind of inherent in the role. And then I think there is a little bit of a value question at some places that's more rampant that I would like about what is the value of the PM role and how do I treat it? And you can see it in ways of like, what do they get paid? And, do we ask them for help? Do we get a second project manager to support them? And so I think that devaluation is it's not everywhere for sure, but I'm hearing more and more stories in the DPM Summit. I heard more and more and I was like, why are you putting up with this? Oh, it will change, or I got to do... No, it's fine because grass isn't greener. Grass is grass, right? It's a different situation. But if it's not healthy for you and it goes on too long, you have to change that. So I think just kind of looking at for that community, there's, I think, a challenge there because of the role. But then talking about what can you do for yourself? Like first you got to set your goals, right? We set goals in life. You're great at that. We've talked about that before. But really sitting down and setting goals, but what are the areas that you need to focus on? So I kind of walked through like 3 different areas.
That's great. So one of the pieces of advice I give to people, especially because I really like what you said there about, no, it'll get better. The pain will stop at some point. If I just make a few more spreadsheets, I'll solve this. Or the owner won't be bipolar and yell at me one day and praise me the next day. And if I can just get this all figured out, I've had those conversations. And one of the pieces of advice I usually give to people is don't leave. I don't mean quit your job, but get out of there and go talk to other people doing this job. Like like you were saying, a sense of community. Reach out to people on LinkedIn, grab coffee, do whatever, and just kind of talk about stuff. Like, you need perspective because without that perspective, you kind of create your own mythology within your walls of the company you're working at, right? And the more you stay there, the more isolated you become, and the more that seems like that's the real world. When you go out and you start talking to those other people, you find out they're like, oh, really? You don't have to like do QA like on the copy? Your team actually does that for you? Like, there's so many things I think you can learn by being a part of the community and embracing it. But it's hard, right? I want to go home and I want to watch Game of Thrones and hang out with my family, right?
Yes.
I don't want to leave work and go to some like place where I have to listen to people talk.
Once you do that, though, I mean, whether it's a mentor or just, peers, I think it changes everything. I also tell some people, because some people, we've all done it. You get into a phase where you're just complaining and bitching about the situation. It's so bad and this and that. Go start interviewing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean you need to leave, but it starts to make you think about not only like what it's like elsewhere, but also what you want.
Right.
Because then you have to answer questions about what you value, what you care, what you do, and then you start redefining who you are. Because I think when you get into that terrible place, you forget what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, that's great, because I say that to people a lot too, is that you should be interviewing on occasion. It's good to know what your market value is, right? And then how other people are, like you said, how other people are actually doing the same, air quotes, thing that you're doing, right?
But I think it's good to even have any way to have a dialogue. So we're having one now, right? But you can write, blog or, that kind of thing makes you more clear on what you even want. Yeah.
But again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's hard sometimes, especially my experience with product managers, project managers, people in those roles is when they are done with work, they just want to be done with work because, to your point, right, a lot of them are approaching burnout. And the last thing I want to do is leave and go and talk more about what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for sometimes to see the value in that. But I can't stress enough how important it really is.
I would agree.
With that, you then took the next step and said, well, it's not good enough just to speak at events. I'm going to throw an event.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Well, I thought, I plan things and events in my life. This is not going to be a big deal.
Okay.
It's a little more of a big deal than I thought.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I want to say congratulations. Everything I've heard about it was very positive.
Yeah. So a couple years back, 4 years after I went to the DPM Summit and I had done that, I loved the ability to connect with people. So both for networking for your career and then connecting to have that dialogue. Because after that conference and after I'm really active in the Drupal community, and after I reached out and tagged people in the hallway, I'm like, you're a project manager, come talk to me.
Yeah.
I would email them throughout the year and say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. How do you guys do this? Or I'm trying to hire this role. I haven't hired this role before. What do you guys have a list of questions, or what do you do? So I found a lot of value in it. The problem is with the DPM Summit is that folks can not afford to go there every year often. Okay. Because it's you have to travel, right? And the fees are a little more spendy. But also you're maybe networking with people around the country versus in your backyard. And if you're looking for jobs or finding a way to meet people face to face, we can't do that. So I had thought about it for a long time. And then about a year and a half ago, I went freelance and I said, what's my problem? I have no excuse, do this. So I created a conference called Manage Digital, which was just a one-day event to bring people together, to network, have conversations, and to learn.
And so what was there a theme to the event, or was it really just about community and building community?
So when I wrote down my goals, because of course I made a strategic brief to do that.
Was there a spreadsheet in there too, Lynn?
Of course there was. There was multiple spreadsheets.
Awesome.
But my goal was, number one goal of the conference was to provide networking opportunities. So make lunch a little longer, have a happy hour, provide ways to do that so people are talking. The next thing was just to provide learning opportunities on different topics. So for the first one, right, it's such a big undertaking. I didn't necessarily have a theme, but I wanted to make sure that everybody walked away knowing people. So I assigned people homework. At the start of the conference, I made sure, when you go to places, sit by people you don't know. I made sure when they left, you need to reach out to one person when you leave today, and you're going to get together and meet with them and talk about something new. And so, I heard a lot of people talk about it, but it's just do it. That's how you gotta go.
Super smart. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because it keeps bringing up all these feelings of my past experience as a project manager and how,
I hope they're good.
No, I really enjoyed it, but I did not have a sense of the importance of networking as a project manager. I was spending all my time networking internally, right? I was using all of the same sort of influencing power internally, and then to just turn that on outside seemed very difficult. And I run into a lot of project managers, producers, product managers who are just bad at this. They're just bad. They don't know where to start. They feel like I don't have the networking skills. And I always argue you do. You use them every day at work. You can use them with people you don't work with. You can use the same sort of skill sets about approaching people, introducing yourself, like you do when you start a project with a new team, right?
Yes.
But I don't think people put that same lens on something outside when it has to do with their career versus a project. A project, that you're working on, you may own it, you may have ownership of the outcome, right? But it's still something disconnected from you versus your own personal network, which seems a lot more personal. And it seems kind of cold to maybe apply some of those tactics to your own personal self, right? I mean, I know people that literally run their house like a scrum team, you know.
Like, you know someone, or maybe you like quote, you know someone,
no.
or
I'm speaking for a friend.
Okay.
Lynn. No, yes. Not me. No, geez. No, but I do know people that can take it home and find value in applying it to their personal life. But like myself personally, I felt like I was above average in my project management role. But at home, though, it was a disaster. Like, just, I couldn't. I mean, I had like a to-do list. I didn't have any plans. You know what I mean? Yep. But I got better at it because as I got better at project management, I got better at, life management and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So let's say, Lynn, you were to give some advice to a project manager on, let's say they're either in the Twin Cities area or even nationwide. Like, where's the first place I should start going to find that community? Where are some ideas that you would have?
Yeah. And I just wanted to say, too, as I started deciding to network a long time ago, I had heard a talk about personal brand and making sure that defines you, because you never stay in the same place forever. Yeah. And, and it was all a talk about how companies should allow people to build their personal brand, because that means they're working for you and people know them, and it's a big deal, as well as you're getting the opportunity to grow, because maybe you're in a role that doesn't grow much. So that always stuck with me as being important. And plus, I really like to talk to people. So that's probably my problem. I can't stop talking. But I think it's a little hard because there's not a lot of opportunities for project managers. So I think the first place I would have said going to is that there is a local meetup that used to meet every other month, but it hasn't for a long time. So that's a little, I don't know if that's going to get started up again.
But meetup groups and things like that.
Yeah, there's like a interactive project management meetup group on meetup.com, and that would be the best place. The next thing is find a way to a conference, and whether it's the DPM Summit, Managed Digital, or you go to the WordPress or Drupal or something, and find the people that do your job and be awkward and introduce yourself and become friends. And I've found, while it seems like it would be easy for someone that's extroverted like me to go talk to someone, it's really awkward to just walk up randomly and say something. But, half of those people you still remain friends with. So just trying to find the places, maybe if you're going to a DrupalCon, look up the agencies that do similar things, similar size, similar type work. Make sure you go to their booths or find those people or message them early and find them that way. And then locally, you can just go to LinkedIn and search by project manager and find some people and say, hey, I know I don't know you, but do you want to go grab coffee and make sure it's not lunch so someone feels like they have to sit there for 2 hours with you? But grab coffee or happy hour and just say, I've got this is where I'm at. I want to go with this place in my career. I mean, I used to meet with people at my last job all the time that were looking to figure out how to get to the next step and things like that. And 15, 30 minutes is not a big deal for someone to take out of their time, and it can really help you.
Yeah, the one thing you mentioned there was personal brand, and I've given similar advice to people, but sometimes the response I get is, well, I don't want to be like a YouTube star or something. Like they immediately go to it's some sort of false thing, right? I mean,
because it sounds like you're selling yourself. Totally. I wish I would have said that word before you, but exactly.
So how do you explain it to people in a way that it makes it more approachable and not sounds so slimy and car salesman-y?
I think it's just a matter of where do you want to go? What space do you want to be in, or where do you want to go with your career, and then figure out the steps you need to get there. So you started a podcast, you made that deliberate choice, and I'm sure it was hard and weird and scary to start with, and it's continuing to grow. And so that's great. But I think you just have to figure out where do I need people to get to know me. I mean, the first time I gave a talk, I basically wrote my whole thing I was saying. It was terrible. But over the years, because I decided to do that, I've met so many people along the way. And that's, in public speaking is not for everybody. But just knowing where you want to be or what space you're in. Because I'm, doing mostly content strategy now.
Yeah.
And so I've made a point to try to, I've done some blog posts about content strategy. Like, just what is it that can get you to where you want to go? And it's going to be hard and scary no matter what.
Yeah, that's the value I find of the role of project manager, because I think because in a lot of places you wear so many different hats, you get to touch a lot of different things and see what is interesting. And one thing I coach people on is be deliberate about that, though, too. Like, really dive into one of these things that seems interesting and seem like maybe this is an opportunity for me to make kind of a career change, or maybe, like you were saying, this could be kind of my North Star of where I want to eventually go to. And maybe it'll take me 4 years or, things like that, right? But now that I have that goal.
Yep. And I think that's like what makes a project manager valuable. When I used to interview project managers all the time, I'd be like trying to figure out in the conversation, they're a project manager and what's their end? They have a deep strength in technical, or they've done a lot of QA, or they really understand UX, because that provides so much value. What you don't want to be is the project manager just filling out the budgets and the tracking the things and sitting back. You want to become
how the work is done.
Yeah, you want to be the main player. You want the client to talk to you to get the answers and want your advice on what they should do.
Right, because they value the project manager. At least some of the better ones I've seen are not just a go-between between the team and the client, right?
Yep. They're
somebody who can answer those questions, or at least come within a 12,000 foot version of that answer, right?
And have opinions, that's
right.
What I want. I want to be like, what, I actually think I would recommend that you do this. Oh, thank you. And you don't need to be taking over someone else's role, but there's probably, wherever you're working, there's probably a hole somewhere on the team. Yeah. And you can fill that if you're interested in it.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about being in a bad position, is that where you're not being viewed as that value? You're trying to add that value, and you're just being blocked because you can't talk to the client, or even in some cases you don't really talk to the team that much, right?
Yeah.
And especially when I've seen it become extremely difficult is when you have a team that isn't around you. Maybe some people are in another country or in another state, or some are work from home, and trying to build that sort of team can be really difficult. I've seen some people be very good at it, but I just don't know how they do it.
Yeah. And I think, too, when you think about if you want to stay in the field, there was actually a talk on the DPM Summit about options for growth, right? And really a lot of it centers around management.
Sure.
But you don't have to do that, Once you get your footing and you get people and you use a framework to do stuff, that's 2-3 years in. Okay, now what? And then start to grow where your interest level is and grab that space. And if people don't want you to, go find a place you can do that at.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is those places, right? I mean, especially, growing companies, but I've even seen places like Medtronic where they have deliberate tracks for you're an individual contributor track, and here's your leadership track, or here's your management track, or whichever. And they can build certain places. It can help you find the path that you want to go down. But yeah, to your point about meetups and other things where I've seen project managers really thrive, not just going to a project management one, but maybe a UX one, because I found some interest in user experience. And so I'm going to spend some time with that group and going out there and learning from them versus just only my project and my team. You can start to get a more of a global view that way.
Absolutely. I've been to 3 different confabs so far, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, content strategy is its own animal.
It is. And it's also a community that doesn't get enough credit and value yet either.
Totally.
Which blows my mind.
But content strategy is very natural in the digital project management world, because I know plenty of digital project managers that play a third of that role on projects because there's nobody else doing it. The user experience designer is I'm here for the architecture. The developers I'm here to deploy. And the project manager, I have a really good friend who had to merge like 3 pharmaceutical companies into one website. They had 3 different brands. They all merged, but they all wanted their content.
Of course.
And he basically...
that makes perfect sense.
Doesn't it, though? Because you want all of it, right?
Never throw it out. And that's just
never
wrong.
throw it out.
No, keep it all.
Especially
from like 10 years ago. Just
that's right.
Keep it.
Digital hoarding is a disease. And
it really is. And the whole world has it.
I wish that's going to be my next podcast, Lynn, is it's going to be digital intervention, right? Where we sit down with people and say, we want to talk about how great your website is. And then like bring in a content strategist.
People should just bring in their hard drives and you sit silently for an hour while you delete all your digital backlog for like 20 years.
Right. Yeah. Just get rid of those white papers from 1983. I think that's where people kind of struggle. And where, honestly, I've seen sites or site builds, and not even sites, even just digital products, where the content really becomes the thing that's thought of last. And it's the thing that makes or breaks a lot of the success, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I approach it. So I'm not a writer. So a lot of content strategists come from that writing background in. And I really, because of my project management, I really focus on the management process because let's be honest, that's kind of part of the problem. And then like user experience. So just trying to think of like the past users would go down to find things. And so that I can really take this complicated mess and give clients like exact things to write in tiny little pieces. So there's still that writing problem out there, but at least we're getting to the goal line. We're getting rid of stuff. Yeah. We're figuring out what we need and what users need and hitting goals and stuff. So project management really is like a great entree into that if anyone's kind of passionate also about user experience.
But that's another thing I think that's interesting about that digital project management role. Much like a construction project manager, like you're working with so many different disciplines and you've got to understand just enough about each one of those. And some are not interesting. Like, you know what I mean? They're just not. Like, I don't want to learn more about how you're storing this information or graph databases and things. I don't want to know anything about it, but I have to, right? I have to find some way to get engaged with that, right? What about, the other side of the coin, working with sales, right? As a project manager, a lot of people that I find in the project manager role, especially in the agency role, that's one relationship where they struggle the most. How have you found success working with a sales team?
Yeah. So when I went to that agency where I kind of started the role, we were really small, right? So we communicated really well and worked together. But in the first year, I would just get this like, here, we want a sale and everybody should be happy, right? Yes. Somebody worked really hard and we got a bunch of money. But I was like, what did you sell? Where's the scope?
What did we promise?
When did you say it was done? Why is this happening? And so I just said, this is not for the best of the team, for the company, or the client. So I'm just going to start becoming part of sales. So I just butted my way in and started attending sales meetings and started writing. By the end, I was writing most of the proposals and collaborating with the CEO, who was great. And it was a good compliment because he was more like big picture and, we can do anything. And I'm like, all right, here's what we're not going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And we were a good mix together because then we brought the practicality to it.
The yin and yang.
Yeah. And so I didn't ask for, if I could, I just did. Now, everyone doesn't work in an environment like that, and everyone doesn't work in a small place, right? You do a lot of different things when you're in a small place. But if you're working at a bigger place, you need to find a way to do it. And whether you have a boss that should be interacting with sales to solve it or not. When I went to another agency where I was the boss person and in charge of the production team, we were getting really bad stuff thrown over. And I'd have clients calling me and screaming like, sales said this is done. I'm like, what is going on? So I just did the same thing. Like, here's how we're losing money. And, if you have to make a case for it with stats and data, and we were just wasting money because we were causing problems. And then if you can't, at the end of the day, if the goal is that your client's happy, so they keep doing maintenance work with you, or they call you back, or they refer you, if that is the ultimate goal, I can't do this with this crap. So how can I help you? Can I educate? I've educated some salespeople and like, what's our process? Maybe they don't even know what our process is, or what are the things that are causing the biggest problems? Let me talk to you about it. And then maybe you're kind of more involved. Like, does sales just make the estimates and then you're just dealing with it? Like, is that the right thing? Do they even have factual data? I've gone to so many places that don't track, like, in a spreadsheet what a project was. I mean, it's all in, a harvest or, whatever you're using to track time.
You know what you're invoicing.
But it doesn't break it down into the phases or whatever. Like, maybe if you can isolate here's where we're always selling ourselves short. Mm-hmm. I need more money in this space. Yeah. So if you can have that factual stuff and go do that. And if you're in a nice place, then maybe they'll want to invite you more, or you can help and do that. The tricky part is I've been at a place where then I all of a sudden was doing a lot of sales all the time, and my job wasn't sales, so that became a personal problem for me. Yeah. But I cared more about my team not getting crap and dealing with it, and making sure we had happy people, and happy clients.
Trying to draw hard lines between sales and delivery can be disastrous in organizations because things like you're saying, they do just get tossed over the fence. Mm-hmm. And then the finger pointing begins. Yeah. Right?
And you might need to step back too and make like a policy. Like I worked at a lot of places where we tell the clients first come, first serve. Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean? Well, we fill in our calendar. When you decide to sign, send us the contract, then I'll fill you in. I will let you know at the pre-kickoff meeting where we're at and where it's going to fall. Mm-hmm. And I personally don't ever promise launch dates. And obviously that doesn't work for everything, but I often work with nonprofits, and there's often, 95% of the time, there's not a big event or a big thing. So I can create a schedule that's loose and we think we're going to get somewhere. But until they show me how committed they are to me and our team and responding and things, I'm not going to give them those promises because it's a two-way street, right? Absolutely. So I don't try to pin myself into a spot too fast to be able to do that. So if there's a policy you can create around the problem, so it's like it's not specific to a client or thing, because you don't want to tell that one thing, look, they just gave us money, now you're going to tell them no because you can't start. Okay, well, we can pretend to start. Have you ever worked on a project where you're pretending to start, right? And then you don't really start for 3 months? Yeah. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
It's absolutely terrible. So like, okay, we'll do it one more time and we're done. So how do you get the information you need? How do we set up a new procedure to solve this?
Yeah, that's really good advice. So we're going to wrap it up here. Tell me about what you got coming up. I'm guessing there's going to be another Managed Digital this year, right?
There is. We are going to have that in the spring, looking around May. Okay. But I think the best way for folks that are interested in it, they should go to the website, managedigital.io, and sign up for the newsletter. And then we'll let everyone know when tickets are up for sale, but it'll probably be around January. But we're doing the one-day event again this year, and we are actually going to pump up the networking opportunities so that people are doing that, as well as giving opportunities for experts in the room, like people attending, to have more voice in it. Because just because someone decided to get to stand at the podium doesn't mean that someone in the crowd doesn't also have amazing ideas. Yeah. So I want to create that dialogue a little more amongst the people attending. So that's really kind of my biggest focus. And then I'm working on a blog post and have a talk next month and just kind of doing that kind of stuff.
So if I want to get some coffee with Lynn, because she's fantastic, and
well, I don't drink coffee, network, so happy hour.
Coffee, happy hour, maybe some tea.
Yep.
Where's a good place to find you and connect with you?
Yep. You can go to LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can go to my website, which is lynnwintermn.com. And that's right. I was really slow in getting the URL, so I can't move out of Minnesota ever in my life.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, except for vacations, right?
Yes.
Then you can pretend.
Then for sure.
You can pretend. Yeah. Well, thanks, Lynn. I really enjoyed the conversation. I always enjoy our conversations, but thank you for taking the time today to come and record it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Schmidt List. If you want to learn more about how Foundry accelerates innovation, check out foundrymakes.com. And if you'd like me to speak about establishing a growth mindset at your conference or with your team, drop me a note at kurt@foundrymakes.com. Oh, and the next time you're on the internet, head to iTunes and leave the show a review. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show, and I hope you have a fantastic week.
I'm going back to Cali.